everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg.
We're coming to you today with a movie about Ed Wood.
Also called
coincidentally titled Ed Wood.
Starring Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, and directed by Tim Burton back in 1994.
My favorite Tim Burton movie. By a lot.
I still got to go with Beetlejuice, but this was definitely an enjoyable one. This is a bizarre movie, and it's made even more bizarre just knowing that Ed Wood was actually alive and at least somewhat like this.
I gotta say, I'm not generally a fan of, not Johnny Depp, Tim Burton. Like, his whole shtick that he does with, I don't know, like, I don't dig that much, but holy crap, this movie fires on every imaginable cylinder, and it's just this beautiful, wonderful portrait of a guy who was just terrible at making films, but really had a passion for it. For those of you who may not know, Ed Wood is the guy who directed Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is frequently cited as the worst movie of all time. It's not, obviously, because it's not Mega Piranha, but it's up there. I don't like Mega Piranha, Tony.
What was
such
completely
a misuse
wrong
of
with
Tiffany.
Mega Piranha?
What?
What was wrong with Mega Piranha?
It wasn't Mega Python versus Gatoroid is what the problem with Mega Piranha is. Tiffany's so good in that, and then they put her in Mega Piranha, it's just like, it's not as good. Don't use your Tiffany right, and then like they have all the over-directing that you occasionally get from Asylum new directors, where they're like, I'm gonna put some weird saturation on this, and like, revolutionary style of credits, and just like these big flashes as they cut to things.
Well, none of that was in this movie. Except for the kind of naive nature of Ed Wood as he's just trying to make things work and put out a movie in 4 days.
I will say that it's interesting, we talk about that's not in this movie, but Johnny Depp not Johnny Depp, I keep wanting to say Johnny Depp. Tim Burton specifically did not do a lot of pre-planning for this movie as far as the cinematography goes, because his goal was to shoot it the way he thought Ed Wood might shoot it. Just sort of like setting up a camera, slapping it down, being like, alright, action.
It's got to be a lot less stress.
I guess. But on the other hand, you got to do it artsy, right? Like, you don't want to make an Ed Wood movie about Ed Wood. You want it to be a good movie. You've got all these great actors. I mean, Johnny Depp and Martin Landau playing Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi, and their relationship together was just so great and so moving. I mean, this is like one of the great bromance movies of all time. And one of the guys is a terrible director, and the other guy's a drug-addicted, washed-up former, star.
And whenever we reviewed Glenn or Glenda about a year ago, like we talked about that relationship, but it was pretty awesome to see that actually on the screen this time. Like, I didn't know, I knew he was on drugs and everything. I didn't know he was a morphine addict. I think we might have mentioned that, but I had forgotten. So just seeing the descent and all that was pretty awesome, or rather him trying to rise up from that. But I don't know. I always sleep on Johnny Depp. Like, I'm always like, yeah, he's a great actor and everything, and then he does something like this, and you realize why he's probably top 3 in our generation.
It very well could be. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is way up there as well, but and so there are certain Johnny Depp-isms, like, there are bits of this movie that I don't ever really feel like I lose sight of Johnny Depp playing Ed Wood. But that's not really a criticism, because he still brings that innocence and that naivete and that just great, I don't know, he's so exuberant. He's almost having the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version of Willy Wonka. It's like a lightened up version of that, and don't be turned off by that.
That's the voice that I kept hearing, because I saw the Willy Wonka movie first. Just the very light kind of effeminate touch to the end of words, always smiling and everything. Kind of reminded me of that as well.
I gotta say, personally, I didn't hate Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I know many people did, but I thought especially his rendition of Willy Wonka and just how weird that guy is. I've talked about this in the past, and everybody hates me because I like his performance better than Gene Hackman's. But I thought that actually he really embodied Willy Wonka really well. He brought that weird Michael Jackson vibe to him, where it's like, you're super cheerful, but I'm also really kind of creeped out by you, in a way that I never felt personally with Gene Hackman. And
That's Gene Wilder, not Gene Hackman.
send
Gene
hate mail
Hackman
to
is like
at HE
Lex
Podcast,
Luthor.
care of Tony Southcott.
What's that?
I said send your hate mail to at HE Podcast at gmail.com.
I'm just thinking of Lex Luthor version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Man, wouldn't Johnny Depp be great to play Lex Luthor?
He
Wow,
probably
that just that thought just suddenly blew my mind. Like, wow, forget about whoever they've got for the new Superman.
Jesse Eisenberg or whatever.
Yeah, Eisenberg. Although he looks great in American Ultra, I gotta say. But like, forget about him. Johnny Depp would be an awesome Lex Luthor.
He also adds substantially to the budget. Actually, I guess he's not the most expensive actor if they can get him into Tusk, though that was more of a personal, like...
I think that a lot of... Yeah, it all depends, right? I mean, you know, it's just like things you do. And actors aren't any different from other people as far as how they work, right? Like, if you like somebody and you want to be in their project, it's sort of, you know... It's like I had a guy come over and help me with my plumbing the other day. He didn't charge me nothing. He's just like, hey, here you go. You know... You're a good friend, and I'm going to help you out. And I tried to pay him, and he wouldn't take it. An actor can do that too if they want to, although I think they have to. SAG requires certain things, which I think is why Johnny Depp didn't get credited in Tusk.
Yeah,
he's not credited as Johnny Depp, even though it's obviously him.
It's just Guy Lepont.
Yeah, because SAG wouldn't let him take a salary cut below what he was, worth or whatever, and obviously Kevin Smith could not pay him what he was worth.
Yeah, his budget was $3 million for the whole film. That wouldn't even cover him for a major movie.
So anyway, but yeah, you can, I think that there's a certain level of passion projects for actors as well, and I think that Johnny Depp enjoys working with Tim Burton, and this is certainly a fascinating project. I know Tim Burton just when I was reading about the production of this film, and he sort of read the script and just dropped everything. He's like, we're making this movie now. Like my other movie, let's squeeze it in somehow, because this other thing I'm gonna make, not important, is making Ed Wood. And it was fascinating too how he convinced them to make it in black and white, because this film is in black and white, by the way. It opens as if it was an Ed Wood film, and you think, oh well, maybe this is just a gimmick, but it stays that way through the whole movie. They keep it in the black and white. And the interesting thing was, do you know why they did it in black and white? Ultimately, how he convinced Disney, who is the distributor of this, to do it in black and white?
I do not. I just thought it was a stylistic thing because of the year that Ed Wood was producing movies.
Well, it's obviously partly that, and that's definitely... But, a lot of times, there's a lot of directors who are like, I'm going to make my film in black and white, it'll be artistic vision, and all this stuff, and they're like... She's like, yeah, no, we want to make money. But they did a bunch of screen tests with Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi, and nobody knows what color, apparently anyway, they don't know what color Bela Lugosi's eyes are, because all of his pictures of him are in black and white.
That's interesting. You would have thought with all the people on the set and how many times he used the vampire hypnosis and everything, they could have found somebody that knew what his eye color was. Well,
either it was, I said that nobody knew, that's what I read, okay? And now that I'm saying it, it sounds ridiculous. Somebody must have written down his blazing green eyes.
When did Bela Lugosi die? It was the early 70s, right? Or was it the 60s?
Well, it was, spoilers for the movie, Tony, but it was in the late 50s.
I thought that it might have been a little further along by then, but you're probably right.
It was late 50s, early 60s. Plan 9 didn't come out that late in the game.
Yeah.
And that footage, according to the movie, was shot for a while before he actually made the rest of the movie. Plan 9. But I thought that, nobody could make Bela Lugosi as Dracula look right in color. So they just, said, alright. Johnny Depp, they were having all these issues trying to make it look right, trying to get the makeup right, and Johnny Depp said, hey guys, and just, turned the saturation all the way down on a television that they were viewing some preview shots, and he said, look at that. Looks pretty convincing now, doesn't it? And they're like, alright. We'll do black and white. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I always enjoy a black and white movie every once in a while. Didn't enjoy it as much with Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, but this was better than that. That was
just a tedious movie, though. This movie you could really, for me anyway, while there was some beautiful cinematography in there, I didn't really feel connected to anybody in this movie. I felt a connection to all these people. I mean, every single character in this movie, I feel like, has an interesting story to tell and all this background to their character. You have Ed Wood, you have his first girlfriend who's like, I mean, how fascinating is that character? The first girlfriend or wife or whatever that he has, like, she's supporting him, she's trying to help him out, but she, I mean, is clearly coming to the end of her rope, and to see that decay happen, and, you know that it actually happened in real life, to see her saying, oh, I believe in you, you can get this done, and she supports him, but at a certain point she's just like, dude, we're just making garbage, okay? I'm sorry, I appreciate your dreams, but no, I can't keep going. Like, that felt so real and so raw, and like, I mean, that's a quote-unquote minor character. I guess not minor character, but compared to like Bella and Ed Wood's characters, she's kind of just there. And then you have, the other girl that comes in later and they get married, I guess at the very end of the movie they get married, Kathy. And her character feels you don't get a super in-depth thing, but just having them, like the chemistry between them, and the fact that she's sitting there like knitting socks for her dad, like you just get a picture of who this person is and all these great character moments that you can just buy into, even if the person doesn't have that many scenes. I mean, that guy who was a butcher, who financed the film, whatchamacallit, the Bride of the Monster, like, he's in 2 scenes, or 3 scenes possibly, and he's great.
Yeah, definitely.
It helps that he has the face. I mean, the face is iconic and amazing. I don't know who the actor is who played him, but that is
I don't know offhand either. I've definitely seen him in a lot, though. Like, he's never been like a leading guy, but he's always kind of there in the background.
So I just thought, I mean, from that perspective, this film is just so compelling. And then you have this, like I said, this guy who's an artist trying to do something, and he's bad at it. And he meets the guy who used to be great, and now he's on the rocks. He sucks all of these people in. And there's this great scene where his, like, I guess transgender friend, but who actually wants to change his gender, whereas Ed Wood just likes to dress in women's clothes.
Played by Bill Murray.
That's a whole thing too, by the way. They're not shy about the transvestite issue, and they do a great job of like playing with it so that it's a little bit funny, but not making fun of it. You get that this is a serious thing for Ed, but it does get him into some kind of comical situations.
Well, it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back at one point, where everybody's like, they're having an after rap party, and Ed Wood's sitting there dancing in like kind of a belly dancer outfit, and his girlfriend, like, that was just her last straw. She was like, okay, I'm done. Everybody's celebrating this hunk of crap we just made, and he's in like stockings dancing around for him like it's supposed to be something sexy. And she just blew up and ran.
But I thought that was, like, all that was handled really well. And there's that scene where they get, like, him and his either gay or, like, transgender friend. I wasn't 100% clear on exactly what was going on there. But they all have to go and get baptized at this Baptist church because those are the people who are going to fund their movie so that they can make a profit and make a movie for each of the 12 apostles.
Ed Wood, like, for all of his faults, he definitely knew how to find funding from any place he could.
He was a hustler, I'll tell you that. But, like, they just have this moment where Bill Murray's playing the character, and he looks over at Ed Wood, and he says, what kind of person are that you can get all of your friends to get baptized so that you can get funding for your movies? Just, like, he's doing it, and he's in awe of the fact that, like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Why am I doing this for you? And I love that. I love that his, like, the charisma of his personality attracted people in that way where, you couldn't explain it. You couldn't say, like there's nothing about him that's particularly artistically great, but he believes in himself so much so other people just can't help but sort of being sucked into it. And his enthusiasm and his hard work, like, people just kind of, like, even if they're not interested, the whole vampire thing I thought was really interesting, where he just keeps calling her.
Yeah,
and he's like, oh yeah,
she
hey,
should have
vampire,
by all rights just written him off like a long time before, whenever he, like, after he pretty much begged her in front of her friends, like, to come over and talk to some people. Like, she probably should have never spoken to him again, but then she's all of a sudden in Plan 9 and all these other movies with him.
Well, also, and I think partly because she lost, he saw her luck changing, and he's like, aha, she's not making money on the TV show anymore, I'll snatch her up. And So, she was kind of there out of convenience and sort of pushed herself, pushed around a little bit so she didn't have to have any lines. I thought that was great. Where like, you can't have the vampire talk. She says she doesn't want any lines, and the guy's complaining about Tor saying this stuff. It's like, you got to give the lines to somebody, bub. Also, the joke about people saying, "Is he still alive?" about Bela Lugosi, that was great. He's
And he
still
eventually
alive?
just uses that anyway.
And then it like bumps, like it finally comes up to the end where he's not still alive, and he's like, "Well, no, he's not still alive, but I have footage."
It's all about that stock footage being cut in. I just can't imagine like being told to like get in this pond at like 2 a.m. and pretend like you're being eaten by a plastic octopus, but you have to like swing all the arms around and everything. I love that scene.
Well, that was great too, because speaking to that character, Bela Lugosi's character, he's really fascinating to me in that he's world weary. He kind of knows he's acting in crap, but he throws everything he has. I mean, you see that this guy is in fact a great actor, and even though Ed Wood is a terrible director, like, this guy, as much as he's just like, oh, I'm not interested, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, like, when he gets on camera, when action is called, he is on. He throws himself into that thrashing around. He's, like, all of the, like, I'm tired and old and everything is just disappeared, and you see him snap into that role of, like, I may be thrashing around at 3 a.m. with a plastic octopus in a freezing cold pool of water, but this is my job, and I am gonna do it as much as I can. As bad as I feel, as much as I want to fix something or whatever, I'm on right now, and I'm going to do it. And I love that. Man, that's a great character.
I always felt that had to have been just at least partially drawn from the faith that Ed Wood put into him, like whenever everybody else had forgotten him. When everybody else in Hollywood literally thinks he's dead.
Well, yeah, and you see that too, and this guy, this guy was great. He was, lauded for his performances, and he's iconic in a way, and yet, like, he's being forgotten, and I think that Ed Wood, although there's part of it is definitely the friendship, I think that there's a sense of pride there. Like, he needs somebody to tell him, you're still great, you're still awesome, and the fact that Ed Wood comes along and does that, even though he is so bad at what he does, like, Ed Wood doesn't just believe in himself, he believes in other people. And I think that is part of what kind of, at least in the movie, I've very little knowledge of, I know that a lot of this happened, although the scene with Orson Welles was completely made up. But I don't know specifically how the real man would have come across in real life. I haven't seen any interviews or anything with him. But just the way he's portrayed in this movie, it's very compelling. His character and how he sucks people in, how much he does believe in himself and believes in other people and says, hey, no, you're a great actor, you can do this. And even when things are like, everybody's just pulling his strings, so to speak, like, to make a reference to the first movie, Glenn or Glenda, everybody's trying to tell him what their part's going to be and what they will do and what they won't do, and the people with the money saying, oh, I want an explosion at the end, son, and my son's gonna, like, he just takes all that, he's like, all right, I don't, okay, we're gonna make this movie, whatever, and like just pushes through and sucks it up. Like, that's another thing I think we talk about a lot with art and, sort of making things. Sometimes there's that sense of it's gotta be perfect, and you need to have more of that than he had, okay?
Yeah.
But
it's like the part where he's yelling, those Baptists are so stupid, after they were like, but he kicked over the gravestone, it looks phony. Like, just like these legitimate criticism, and he's just freaking out on him because it's going against like his vision, his work style. Or whenever he runs into the door.
I love that they brought that back though, for real, because Thor does, like, they're going into the theater and he just smacks into the door of the theater the same way. That was a great callback, and there's several great little gags like that, like the green dress or the blue dress. He's like, which one do you like, the green dress or the blue dress? And he looks at it and he's like, I can't tell the difference, I'm colorblind. That was like I get it, the movie's in black and white, I get what you're doing there, Tim Burton. Like, they have several great just jokes. I mean, that's all you can call them, is just there's some jokes thrown in here in this relatively serious movie, And it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like, oh, well, you've just taken me out of the scene, Tim Burton. It all felt just super enjoyable. I was on board for this the whole way through.
Definitely, and it's a 21-year-old movie, and like it holds up perfectly. I know it's partially because it's a period piece, but I'm just so glad that this movie existed, and I never knew that I needed to see it. What is the book that this is based off? Danny Brophy was telling us this the other day.
Oh, I knew. I looked it up. Nightmare in Ecstasy. Nightmare of Ecstasy, I think.
Something
Which
that
is
I think
not
we're definitely
available
gonna have
on
to
your
check out.
Kindle, by the way. I'm kind of upset about that because I wanted to read it, honestly. Like, after he told us, Danny Brophy was telling us that this is based on a book, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Went to look it up, not digitally available. I have to buy a hard copy, and it's probably like 20 years old at this point. Maybe it's not that good, for all I know. But I would be interested in reading some of this story and finding out more of the details. They do invent some things for the movie. Although, again, for the movie, it's amazing. The scene where he meets Orson Welles is such a perfect payoff, and exactly what that moment needed, even though it didn't actually happen. When he goes into that bar and sees Orson Welles, played by Vincent D'Onofrio himself, the Kingpin, great Orson Welles impression, and like they just connect. Like this, like the worst filmmaker of all time and the greatest filmmaker of all time, sitting there in a bar. One of them's wearing an Angora sweater and like with lipstick on, and they're just sitting there as artists commiserating about how the man keeps screwing them over and how that nobody will let them make their vision. Like that scene, just I mean everything leading up to that, just it's so beautiful.
What else was manufactured for the movie? That I didn't know that scene never happened. It seemed like something that could happen in the absurd life of Ed Wood. But he would only meet his hero if he was wearing a dress.
Apparently,
actually, I don't know if,
there was
it
some
wasn't
complaints.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
He wasn't so much his hero. Like, he was kind of a rival at the beginning. He's like, I don't get it. He was 26 when he made Citizen Kane. I'm almost 30.
I didn't think it was a rivalry thing. I think that he looked up to him. Sort of like, how writers today will look at Stephen King and say, wow, Stephen King, I don't know, whatever age he was. Any writer that you love, or, let's say, I'm talking about writing because that was my entry point into the world of making things. But, you'll look at somebody and be like, wow, they're successful at this age. I'm older than that or getting to be that, and I'm nowhere close to where they are. What's wrong with me? I think I don't think it was him, like, hating on Orson Welles. He was just saying, like, where am I at? Why haven't I gotten to that point in my life yet?
Yeah, true.
But some of the things that were manufactured, I read that there were complaints about Bela Lugosi swearing, specifically about, who's the guy who played Frankenstein?
Karloff.
Yeah. Some of the people who knew him's like, yeah, they wouldn't have swore like that, and the scriptwriters took some of the stuff from the book that wasn't dialogue, but had been influenced by the way the guy was writing the book, and gave it to him as dialogue in a way that he wouldn't have said it. Probably there were things that were, there's obviously all condensation and stuff that happens, and specific things may not have happened exactly the way they're shown, but I think that most of the movie has some grounding basis in fact.
And like, how about Morton Landau too? Like, that was nuts. I was wondering if that was his daughter that was playing, because she also had the Landau name, the brunette that said she was going to pay for the production of Plan, or not.
She
Plan
didn't say
9,
she was going to pay. She just said it wasn't very much money.
Yeah. That was like, she had the last name Landau, so I was wondering if that might be his daughter, but I didn't have time to research it.
I wondered the same thing too, and I also did not have time to research, and I'm not going to research it on the fly right now. So, but it seems like a big coincidence if it isn't that.
Yeah, just like the whole Elvira, like, stealing vampires, like, act and somehow getting away with it. That was like a little footnote at the end. Did you notice that?
Well, she sued her, didn't she? I thought she sued her successfully.
Yeah, but it was unsuccessful.
Oh. I thought it said successfully. I completely missed the "un" part there. That changes a lot of things. When you put an "un" in front of a word, apparently that makes it a different word. But I didn't realize that was unsuccessful. And it's just a look. I don't know. Yeah. There is certain. It's debatable for me whether that's stealing somebody's thing. Although there is many similarities, but I thought it was interesting. I would be interested to see just a biopic of her at some point. Because she was the first ever female host of a show, and
Really?
like creating that personality and, you know, sort of the way that, you know, she built up that persona and really played to that kind of thing really well. I thought that is an interesting sort of story that I would like to see told in a similar way. So
Definitely, and I kind of miss shows like that where you actually had like the host come out and talk about stuff beforehand, and then show you the actual creature feature movie or anything like that. Like, it's definitely a thing of the past. You don't really get that anymore.
yeah, and you want to hear something that is interesting that we don't get anymore. You know, Mystery Science Theater 3000, right? Which everybody.
Oh yeah,
Do you know who doesn't know about Mystery Science Theater 3000 as of yesterday? Until I told that person.
Brantley.
No. Brantley Hall knows all about. Hannah Elizabeth Thompson Newell
What?
doesn't know about Mystery Science Theater 3000. I was just talking offhand to
Well,
her
you
about
have
it. I was
much
like,
to
yeah,
learn.
I've been seeing some Mystery Science Theater 3000 stuff. You know, I kind of watch their stuff and feel bad about how my stuff isn't as good. And she's like, I don't think what is Mystery Science Theater 3000? I was like, I'm sorry, what? What are you talking
She's
about?
very young though. She just turned 21.
No, you can't. Although, okay, I will say this. You're right. She is young, and not everybody knows can everything. Although, those of y'all who haven't heard of Mystery Science Theater should check it out. They've got some free episodes on Hulu, I believe you can watch.
They've got
Some
quite
of
a few on Netflix now too.
There's some on Netflix. You can get all of them on YouTube. You know, not legally, but the people
They're
upload
there.
them there, and they're in poorer quality as well. But it's weird because those same guys now do riff tracks. So they don't have the skits, but they're still the same people commenting on the movie. And they have those on Hulu as well. Not all of them, but some, again, so that you can kind of get your appetite whetted and hopefully go buy more. And I was watching some of those riff tracks on Hulu, and it's so weird to hear them making modern references, like while they're watching this old style B movie and talking with the same voices that Joel and the bots had. It just like freaked me. I was like, you can't talk about Lady Gaga. This no. What?
They're actually doing some pretty interesting stuff where they're doing like live shows in theaters. Like we went and saw The Room where they were doing that.
I heard that
interesting.
they did some for Sharknado as well.
Yeah, I saw that. Like you were talking earlier about or yesterday, sometime recently, about Sharknado and how much effort they put into advertising for it. They pretty much got every possible way of doing this like out there. They got the Sharknado like riff tracks. They got everything going. It's insane. How is that movie so big right now?
I have no idea, man. Well, I can tell you. No, here's the thing. They did a really good job of leveraging the good thing that they had. All right? But they saw what a great success it was and how people latched on, and the Asylum can sometimes be a little bit bad at they're not great at social media. They don't have a great website, but they figured out this whole cultural phenomenon thing, and they have milked that as much as they can, and they've brought, you know, like I said, bringing other brands into it, making sure they come out with a new one every year. Like having the whole, you know, convincing Sci-Fi to make that a big event. The Sharknado 3 had a great lead-in with all kinds of other bad shark movies and things that like built up to Sharknado 3, and they kept advertising it. And I mean, they really tapped into that, I think, in a really unique way. They've made use of the gift that was given them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would argue like, oh, it's getting stale or whatever, but I think that there is still a segment of the population. I mean, I watched it. I think there are people who are still like, all right, well, I want to see what this one's about now, because they got everybody talking about it, and they've latched onto at least enough of those people to keep it profitable. So I think they were very smart in how that they handled what they had with the Sharknado thing.
Before we get too far away from Ed Wood, do you have anything else on the movie?
I feel like that there's more I should say, but I can't think of it right off the top of my head. I just want y'all to see it, is the main thing. I want y'all to watch Ed Wood. It's a beautiful movie.
It's $3 on Amazon right now for the pay-per-view. We ended up watching it that way.
And I don't know. It'll make you laugh. It may make you cry. I don't think I ever actually cried, but there were definitely legitimately moments of sadness. And to know that this was a real guy who really, struggled to make something that he thought was great and failed, but never stopped. At least in the way the movie's shot, at least. I think that maybe things got worse for him later on, but to see him continuing to work and continuing to try to make something of himself as an artist, that was, it's inspiring to me.
It definitely was. And like, even if it is the hack work,
you do the work that you've got. That's the message of this movie. You do what you can do, and maybe it's not good, but even today, even though we recognize it's not good, we know who Ed Wood is. We know Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I think that these movies that are made with passion, and I've heard this debate a lot about like how movies that are made to be good but end up being bad versus movies that are made intentionally bad. I think that there's a lot more of a gray area there than people realize. I think a lot of times somebody on the movie is trying to do it right, and it's just limitations of budget and time. But people respond to passion, and I think we've talked about that in the past. But Ed Wood is proof of that. That even though it may not create great art, people do respond when you follow your dreams and do the best you can to be the best that you can. And
to the point that 65 years later, we're still talking about all these movies.
Yeah. Even if it is the worst movie of all time, quote unquote, people love it. People talk about it, and there's a reason for that.
I think we're going to end up having to watch Plan 9 at some point for the podcast.
Well, this seems like a good time. I will bring it up later, too, but this seems like a good time to plug Viewer's Choice Month.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys want us to watch Plan 9 or some other terrible movie, last year we watched Glenn or Glenda, which I thought was really interesting in the Viewer's Choice Month. But we are having Viewer's Choice Month. Nominations are going on right now at humanechoes.com. The way this works is you can go to the nominations post on humanechoes.com. You click there, you nominate 3 movies. Only 3, no more, no less. Nominate 3 movies. Those movies are going to get put into a grab bag after this week. So you've only got a week to do this when this comes out. I think that's about right. Yeah. When this comes out, you'll have about a week left to nominate. And the week after that, they'll go into a grab bag, and you guys will be voting. So you can nominate bad movies. You can nominate like overlooked gems that we haven't heard of. You can literally, it is your choice. The power is yours. Whatever you want to nominate. This is your chance
to torture or enlighten or whatever you want from us. Like we saw 2 terrible movies. We saw 2 pretty good movies last year.
Yeah, we watched Candyman. We talked about this in the past, but Candyman was during Viewer's Choice Month, and that was a revelation. That may have been, if not the best horror movie I've ever seen, one of the best pure horror movies I've ever seen. That just sort of sticks to all the tropes, and yet still does something interesting and different in a really, really cool way. Y'all need to see Candyman. So.
Yeah. I still haven't gone on to see the sequel or anything because I don't want to lose the ambiguity of that movie.
I don't want to. I don't either.
Like it as a standalone.
It's so perfect on its own. I'm sure there's great things in the sequel, and maybe we'll eventually watch them. Maybe you guys can make us watch it. There are some, by the way, limitations. Can't be a movie we've already seen. Obviously, should be obvious, and we're not doing like porn stuff. Okay, nothing higher than rated R. Just throwing that out there.
One thing we didn't mention, every one of you will be given 4 votes because there's 4 Fridays to fill out, and we'll put it all in one giant thread. We'll be able to pick it. It's going to be awesome. Please be kind about the musicals. And look, like, if all early indications are pointing to anything, I think we're going to end up having to watch Rocky Horror. I don't know what else. That seems to be and probably Pippi on the Run. Damn you, John Jones.
John Jones, you keep saying it. It's people are gonna watch and be like, well, I don't know what this Pippi on the Run thing is, and I'm gonna watch it now. You brought it up this time, Tony. John Jones is not making us talk about it on the podcast.
He's even making teaser videos for it, though. Like, he's building this thing up fast.
Anyway, speaking of interaction with our fans, every week we try to do viewer questions, get you guys to send us in some stuff to talk about. This week we had one, and you guys, anytime during the week, you can send it into @HEPodcast. Tony, what is the question for this week?
The first question comes from Hannah Elizabeth Newell. PT Bar. Actually, is she Sherlock Madam or PT Barpun, or what is she right now on Twitter? I think Sherlock Madam.
She's Sherlock Madam.
All right.
She changed it back. We harangued her enough.
Yeah.
Now we need to get her to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000. We use our power for good.
All right. Her first question is, you're sent back in time suddenly. Which would be great overall, except when you appear in the past midair and land on the actor... On an actor, not the first day of filming, you have knocked the actor into a coma. The casting director witnesses this and decides you would be a perfect replacement for our now unconscious actor. What movie are you starring in, and whose place have you taken over?
That was a long tweet.
Yeah.
I assume you got that as an email?
That was a text message, or 5 text messages.
Tony's in tight with Hannah. He knows her. He's sending her text messages and stuff. Okay. Sent back in time.
Any random movie set, you fall on top of them and they decide to use you. Can I be Conan?
Can you be Conan? That strains credulity, Tony. I want to be Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. Me and you will make cinema history. It's the most baffling casting decisions ever. So the two most baffling casting decisions ever. An IT guy with iritis playing Conan, and a 6'4" bald guy playing Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind.
I'd watch those.
Yeah.
Just me like pushing a wheel for hours until I become the size of Arnold. I think that's how it works.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think there's anything. Hormone injections, I guess, would help me in a wig. But I'm trying to think seriously. What would be, I'm trying to think of like a movie that would be really cool to be a part of. I'd like to be in one of those great fantasy epics like Ben-Hur, or not fantasy necessarily, but where the big, set pieces were built. You had Ben-Hur, you had the Ten Commandments, a little bit more recently you had like Lawrence of Arabia, those things where they filmed, they didn't have CG, so they had to, film the wide sweeping stuff in real life. I would love to go back and just in some way be a part of that. Even to go back and be a part of like, not Birth of a Nation. What's the guy? Intolerance. Yeah. Like in all of the spectacle that was involved with that. Like I don't even have to be a main actor in that. Just to be there. I mean, they had. I remember reading something about like that. There was one shot where they basically had to get everybody in Hollywood in this one shot as an extra because they had many thousands of people, and there weren't actually that many people living in Hollywood at the time.
Didn't that movie end up kind of flopping in the box office too?
Yes. It did not do as well as the previous movie, which was about the Ku Klux Klan. So, Birth of a Nation, one of those movies that is like it's formative to the art of cinema, and yet it was horribly offensive because it's about like how great the Ku Klux Klan is. Not okay. From what I'm told, I haven't seen it, so maybe film historians could correct me, but from what I'm told, it portrays the Klan in a very favorable light. Yeah. Let's just say that and not go much further. But it did solidify, and the guy, it's interesting, I think we have talked about this in the past, but the guy D.W. Griffith who made it, I think kind of got the racism finger pointed at him, and he felt bad. So he tried to make this other movie, Intolerance, about like, oh, maybe we should all love each other and be happy, and nobody went and saw that. not ever we should love each other, but sort of like, hey, you're right, intolerance is a bad thing. I'm going to make a whole movie sort of to apologize, and it failed. That's something I'd love to see a biopic of. D.W. Griffith, that'd be fascinating, and like not pull any punches or anything, but like show the institutionalized racism of the time and how that. Like legitimately people who think that they are good people get sucked into that and, just sort of like, oh, well, yeah, everybody's racist. and the people who live in that climate just think it's okay, and then like to see him realize, oh man, I'm kind of a jerk. I really want to see that.
That would be pretty fascinating. I'm sure there's a good book on it, but I don't think that's ever been turned into a movie.
I don't know if it has. Certainly, it's not anything on the profile of Ed Wood, but like that seems like it would be ripe for. And you have all those great set pieces of his film, so you can use that as the backdrop, because he did, especially with Intolerance, there was all that stuff that got built and then eventually was destroyed, but like huge iconic sets that were put together for that movie.
In the game L.A. Noire, they actually have a scene where you're chasing a guy through that set, and it's supposed to be pretty much life-size, and you're having to climb through, and just it keeps going up and up and up, and it's just crazy. It was awesome to actually get a sense of scale of that.
So I think that's ultimately I'm going to settle on Intolerance, Tony. I don't know who the star of that was, but I just would have loved to have been there for the filming of that. And I wouldn't have to speak, so I could, I could probably do that vaudeville thing they were doing back then with acting, just like gesticulating. We should just do a whole silent podcast one time, Tony.
Just
that
like
would be great.
title cards and everything.
Okay, that's the thing we're going to do.
Cards.
File that away in the idea bin. Silent movie podcast. It'll be like 3 minutes long. It'll just be like us like gesticulating wildly, and then with like title cards like shoved in. Look for that soon. I might even cut this out of the video. Now that I think about it, I'm just gonna surprise y'all. We'll see how I feel tomorrow when I'm editing.
On the same sense of like seeing really cool sets and being a part of something massive, even the original Lord of the Rings series would be pretty awesome to be in. Like some of those towns, they built up a lot. There's a lot of blue screen and green screen stuff, but some of those sets, like especially in the second one, were just these massive towns that were built just for a few scenes. Like I think that'd be pretty cool. Or being on Mad Max, but there is a little more CGI than people like to say in that one.
So Mad Max, the CGI in Mad Max though is not creating things. It's like putting things together that weren't necessarily in the same shot.
Yeah.
The only things that I think that was really made up for Mad Max was like the storm that they go through.
Yeah.
That wasn't actually there, but many of the shots were like going through the desert, and like they couldn't film all the stuff they wanted to film in this one particular canyon because it was, had endangered animals in it or something. So they shot some stuff in there and then like composited in the cars from another shot, but the cars are all real and the canyon's real. They just didn't exist in the same spot.
Yeah, and like sometimes there's an explosion that would be hitting other cars, and they had two things they composited in so the explosion wouldn't hurt other actors, things like that. But it's pretty much seamless.
I will
Silent
say,
podcast.
Speaking of great set pieces, I saw Mission Impossible Rogue Nation yesterday, and I will not spoil anything, but you guys have seen the trailer, but that is just amazing to watch in the theater. That is
Are you talking about the main stunt that they've been promoting for a while?
Yes. And I want to tell people, I want to be as unspoilery as possible, but I want to tell you guys, the trailer does not spoil that. In the film. Have you seen the movie, Tony?
I have not. I'm going tonight to see a double feature of that and Ant-Man.
Like, it is in the film like you see in the trailer, but it's not like one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, I saw this in the trailer. Like, the way it's set up in the movie, like, it'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind. I don't want to say anything more than that. I really enjoyed the film. I did not personally... I think this is a film you can overhype, because I heard a lot of people saying better than Ghost Protocol, better than Ghost Protocol. I didn't feel like that was the case. I still feel like Ghost Protocol is my favorite, but this is like... It's right up there. This was just, maybe I was just a little bit tired. It felt like a little bit long to me, but it was... That was such a great movie, and a lot of great set pieces in that as well. Like actual practical stunts being done, and Tom Cruise being just insane. I mean, you think that the plane thing is bad? Like, there's other stuff that he does in this movie that's like, what is wrong with you? You're in blue jeans and a Hawaiian shirt. No, you cannot be doing that at that speed. It's not okay.
I think the Scientology is working for him. That dude's in his 50s and he's doing all this. I know he's got stuntmen and everything, but he does a lot of his own still.
Anyway, so definitely check out Rogue Nation if you guys are if you liked the previous entry. Is it weird that we're in this era of like really long-lived franchises that just keep being good.
I was wondering about that. Like, some of these are actually improving. Like, you look at the Fast and Furious movies, you look at Mission Impossible, because Mission Impossible 1 was a little bit tedious, had some cool scenes, but it wasn't great.
It's
And
hard to
like
go back to watch Mission Impossible 1 after you've seen like 3, 4, and 5. I mean, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And
Like,
then
in
2
the
I've heard is
second one, there are
garbage. I've never
moments that
watched
are
2.
pretty cool. Third one is basically like, was that a John Woo movie? Like the third
The
one?
second one was a John Woo movie.
Yeah.
The
Where you've
third
got,
one
like, the
was
dual
J.J.
Berettas.
Abrams.
I didn't know it was J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams gave Mission Impossible the Justin Lin treatment and revived that franchise and brought it back to something really great. I mean, 3 isn't my favorite of the series, but it is a good film. And it really does some
I heard that
stuff.
Philip Seymour Hoffman was an excellent villain.
Oh,
in that
he's
one,
so
that's
good
one
in
of
that.
The only
And
one I
they do some really
seen.
cool stuff with the masks, too. I always love, like, looking for how are they doing the masks. Because obviously, the masks in real life aren't perfect. So they'll, like, you'll have the rubber mask and it'll look okay and they'll put it on and there'll be some kind of a cut where they have the other, the actor then is subbed in to play the person with the mask and they'll just have a little, like, rubber thing attached to the bottom of their neck.
It's always so seamless, though, the way they do it.
They
It's
do
awesome.
it really well. And I remember watching the DVD commentary for Mission Impossible 3 and just, like, how Philip Seymour Hoffman, when he's playing Ethan Hunt in the mask, like, did some motions and, like, acted in a way that was like, oh, that's absolutely Tom Cruise. Like, you bought that was still Tom Cruise in the mask, even though it was now switched over to Philip Seymour Hoffman. So good. And there's one of those, there's a mask scene in this one that's very, very similar to that, where you're like, I know how they're doing this, but it's still awesome. It's still awesome that I'm seeing this like this. Very similar to there's a scene in Terminator that does something similar as well, which you guys, it's Terminator 2, which you guys will know about if you, anyway. It's a mirror scene, that's all I'm gonna say. Mirrors for the win.
We have one more question.
Hit me with a question.
This comes from Dave at
Dave
of CRITMO, which is the Critical Moment of Awesome podcast.
Okay.
And he asks, if Buzz Lightyear doesn't know he's a toy, why does he stay still when people are around?
I like to think that is okay, hear me out here.
Like
in the world
Twitch
of
response.
toys, what?
It's like a Twitch response where it just happens.
Yes. Also, okay, first of all, we can argue that it's a Twitch response, but he can also rationalize it because there are giant things running around. I mean, if you want to get real technical, he doesn't talk about it in the first movie. I think that there is a lot of sort of interesting subconscious denial going on with the Buzz Lightyear character because you're right, he does do the Twitch thing where he's just like, oh, stand still now. But also, he doesn't freak out at the fact that there are 500-foot tall humans running around. I mean, that's the bigger issue, right? Like, this guy thinks he's a spaceman. Is his, like, he thinks this is another planet. Maybe it's, he sees the way the other inhabitants of the planet are reacting, and he says, oh, well, I guess I should do the same thing. This clearly is a safety mechanism of some kind. So I think he can rationalize it to himself in that way, but I also think there is a bit of a innate response in the toys themselves that he might be rationalizing away when he does that. You thought you found a plot hole, didn't you? Bam! I sewed that plot hole right up! Logic! What do you think, Tony?
I think that it's probably right. It's like fainting goats. Like, it just happens.
or horses going cribbing. And they grab onto something with their teeth and like just inflate like a balloon. That's a real thing.
I was feeding some goats this weekend and got bit by a demon goat.
A what?
Like, have you ever played Goat Simulator?
No, I have not.
Well, there's you can get a demon goat. Like, if you kill enough people in this one circle, like, you get this perk where you can basically cause a torrent of evil to suck people into it.
Yeah?
And they call it demon goat, and it's like this 6-horned, crazy-looking goat. And at the county fair, there was a place where you could go and get some alfalfa pellets and feed the goats. And there was one of these goats with the crazy horns, like demon horn style. It was nuts.
Oh, they were all
and
like twisty and stuff.
Yeah, they were twisty and they were wide. Instead of being like just little thin horns, they were like flat and wide.
Okay.
I couldn't find what the
I think
actual
they
goat
call that a
breed was.
ram, Tony.
Oh yeah, it's a ram. It was like a Jacob sheep or something like that, I think, but I'm not 100% certain. And I go, like, I'm feeding llamas and alpacas and having a good old time, like, just pretty much feeling like a kid because it's so funny whenever an alpaca licks you. And then I go up to this goat and he just, like, chomps my hand going after the alfalfa, and I'm like, oh, now it's going to be like some Beavers action or something.
That would be also like zombie goats.
Yeah.
I am. Sherlock Madam's the only one who's going to appreciate this joke, Hannah Elizabeth. But here we go. I'm really looking forward to the day when they include Goat Simulator DLC for the Call of Duty franchise, so we can have Call of Duty goats.
Oh, that'd be so strange and awesome. I just wish that Goat
It's a
Simulator was
pun!
multiplayer.
What?
I wish Goat Simulator was more multiplayer. Then we could just it would be as close to Call of Duty goats as we'd probably ever see.
That would be cool. That would be neat.
Especially if you
I
could be the
wouldn't put it
goat that
past those
spawns the
guys.
blue whale.
It's I love their like don't really care about their work attitude that team has. They're like, this game's stupid. I don't know why you're buying it. Here it is. It's $10. It's just a goat. Then you run around and run into things. It's as dumb as you've heard.
We are not going to be fixing errors that don't crash the game because that's part of the allure. That's why you love us.
It's not a bug. It's a goat. I gotta say, Tony, before we wrap up, I heard about this something and I thought you might be excited for. Are you ready and excited for the new adaptation that they're making of Little Women?
I never read the book, never saw the movie.
All right, well, let me increase your level of excitement, Tony. It's a dark and gritty version of Little Women.
So they might get the extra bonus stars for lesbians.
In the dystopian streets of Philadelphia.
Okay. I'm listening.
The series will see the half-sisters come together to unravel a conspiracy that stretches far beyond anything they have ever imagined.
Is this Asylum, or is this, like, who's doing this?
It's the CW is creating an adaptation.
This is going to be, like, a full-on TV show.
It's going to be a whole TV show, a whole series of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, but set in the dystopian future, and they are all, like, apparently hate each other, and they're trying not to kill each other while they unravel this conspiracy, and it sounds so much like the Little Women that everybody loves, Tony.
I am in. I am totally in. I will be the first one watching this movie when it debuts. This will be the first time I've watched the CW since Buffy was brand new.
You don't watch Flash?
I've never seen Flash.
Oh man, that's a good show. They're doing some decent stuff.
I've heard good things. I just don't have time for everything.
That's true. We do, like, I keep thinking, like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm like, wait a minute. When am I gonna do that?
Yeah.
There's no way.
It turns out that full time is still not enough time for all of the things that we like to do. So we'll get to it eventually. Although I might try to watch that one as it premieres just to give them that minute ratings boost.
We may have to do like a gag episode of the recap. Just like that would be great. The Human Echoes recap. By the way, if you like True Detective, one more episode we've got before it's over. The 90-minute episode. Yay. I don't know if I'm in I keep going on because we're doing the True Detective recap for the new show we have, Human Echoes recap. And I keep going on Reddit and people just love it there. And I don't know if I'm the only person who's just kind of ambivalent. And then I get on the podcast and you and Brophy are both like super positive about it. And I'm just kind of like, I guess. I mean, I'm still like not really on board. And I feel like people are going to think I'm dumb for not getting things, but there are connections and characters. And I'm like, who the heck is that? Like the guy, there was a person who came back, who apparently came back in this last episode from having like a really small role in an earlier episode. I'm trying to give spoilers here. I don't want to be specifics, but I saw him and I was like, they're just throwing some new character in right here at the very end. They're like, oh, and then I read up and people are like, oh no, that's this guy who is connected. And I was like, oh, really? Like, I feel like I'm dumb. I feel dumb for not getting all of the little, just tiny breadcrumbs they keep dropping because...
Well, you're also not as invested in the show as these people. Like, these people are actually going back and watching an episode 2 or 3 times in a week, seeing what they can find out.
Maybe.
You're always going to find somebody who's more knowledgeable on any topic you're looking at, especially whenever you're talking about going to the subforum and digging around in there.
I just want to be critical of the show for not delivering the information in a concise and, like, obvious way. I understand that there's going to be red herrings and things that don't apply in a mystery, but this just feels confusing. It's not like, I thought it was going to be this, and then it turned out to be this. I'm just like, oh, that person's a person? Like, that's not, like, that's not a good... For me, that doesn't seem like good storytelling. So I can't tell if I'm just way off base or if everybody else is smarter than me in the world.
It can be both.
It can be both. Yeah, it's bad and I'm dumb.
All right, well, I think we're coming to a close on this episode, but I wanted to take a moment to remind you guys that Danny Brophy and I made a special episode where we reviewed They Live and talked about Roddy Piper, who unfortunately passed away this past week. It's like a lot of people probably know him from his movies, or a lot of people know him from his wrestling, but he was definitely a special guy, a real talent for both wrestling, for smack talk, for all sorts of things. A very creative guy, and it was a shame to lose him. One of his proteges, Ronda Rousey, fought in the UFC, ended up knocking out her opponent 34 seconds. First thing she did was pay respects to him. And it's just like, it's kind of a bigger thing than it sounds for just another wrestler that passed away. And it was a little bit weird to deal with. And I watched They Live for the first time in a long time, and we had a really good time reviewing that and talking about Roddy Piper. So I would be very grateful if you guys check that out. It's only available in audio just because we don't really have a camera set up for Brophy. But I feel like it's a good episode, and if you guys liked They Live, you'll really enjoy it.
And I wasn't connected to... I really had no connection to Roddy Piper at all, which is why I wasn't on the episode, in addition to just time constraints. But seeing how much love people poured out online for him, and just talking about... I mean, he seemed like, in sort of hindsight, he just seemed like, wow, everybody really loved this guy. He was really nice to everybody and funny dude, and I think, that's a testament to... and people say nice things when you die, but there's such a genuine outpouring of love for this guy that makes me want to go back and watch some of his stuff and listen to... Apparently he had a podcast as well.
Yep.
Which I had
a podcast for a while, and he's actually in a movie like Bill Oberst, who we've interviewed a couple times and is a friend of the podcast. He and Roddy Piper in a movie coming out soon called The Chair. It's a prison movie, so we might end up talking about that eventually.
That could be good, or it could be terrible, because as much as I love Bill Oberst, he's not in always the greatest projects. He takes whatever work is paying.
It looked like an interesting movie, but we'll see later.
I do gotta say, you brought up Ronda Rousey, and I heard recently a stat that just astounded me. Apparently her last 4 fights combined are like 4 minutes worth of fighting.
Yeah.
Before she knocked the person out. That's just, that woman is dominating her sport.
Yeah, she is a once in a generation type fighter, and it's incredible to think that in less than 4 minutes of octagon time, she's made millions and millions off of that. But it's the way she's beating people. She went to Brazil, fought a Brazilian woman who's supposed to be a striker that was going to knock her out, all this other stuff, and beat her with striking in 34 seconds. That doesn't happen in championship fights. That's like Mike Tyson level dominance, and it's pretty incredible. I'll see if I can get Al the link, because you could watch the entire fight in an animated GIF.
That's pretty incredible.
Awesome. Yeah.
We'll try to put that in the blog post or something. But anyway, definitely check out our review of They Live and the commemoration of the life of Roddy Piper. You can get all this stuff on humanechoes.com. In addition to that, you can help support the podcast by becoming a sponsor.
There's going to be an Octoshark leveler. There's a Sweet Beats level. A lot of cool stuff. Like the $5 one is going to get you into our bonus episodes. We're going to be doing 2 little half-hour bonus episodes a month, exclusive only to our subscribers. We're working out the kinks of this program right now, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys are really going to enjoy the content. It's a little bit different from stuff we normally do. We'll release a couple of them eventually just so you can get a taste of what it's like. And it's going to be a lot of fun producing this sort of stuff, and it's awesome just to have the time and the means to expand. But in order to keep making this sort of stuff, we do need you guys to subscribe. You can do that through the PayPal link on the humanechoes.com website, and soon we'll have another system. We're getting our store set up. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening. Like, we're really excited about all the changes happening over here.
We are excited about taking your money for stuff. Next week we will be reviewing
audio.
What?
And it'll be awesome to be able to give them something for their money other than just audio and
I'm
gratitude.
joking, Tony. Obviously, we want to add value and things. We really appreciate you guys supporting. Next week, we will be watching What We Do in the Shadows, which is available in your local Redbox or rental place.
Or on Amazon, I believe.
Me and Tony simultaneously happened to get this movie when it came out, and it's great. Like, it's one of the funniest movies that I've seen this year, if not the funniest movie I've seen this year. It's hilarious.
It's a New Zealand movie done in documentary style about a bunch of vampires living in an old mansion.
Yeah, imagine like a mashup of vampire humor and The Office.
Yeah.
But with a good story too. Like, it just has everything. We're gonna talk about it next week. Tune in for that.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, humanechoes.com for all of our content. Have an awesome, awesome day.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.